Have you ever heard the term, the math ain't mathin'? Yeah, I know it's not correct English, but the math ain't mathin' has been a phrase been out for a while when people are trying to say things are just not adding up, right? Well, I think the Bible talks about that as well in James, where the math ain't mathin'. It was happening for the people back in the Bible time. They were concerned that God wasn't taking care of them. And this happened several times in the Bible, from Habakkuk to the people, the disciples. And it happens a lot because we don't understand what God is doing. The Bible does say his ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. And part of the journey is becoming a follower of Christ is learning his thoughts, learning his ways. But if you ever feel like the math ain't mathin' in your life, we got something for you. Hello, Mr. Brown here at Proclaim Ministries, helping you connect faith and life. Today's thought of the day is, if the math ain't mathin', do some different math. If the math ain't math in your life, do some different math, do some different calculations. Or as James said it in James chapter 1, count it all joy. James is saying, hey, look at it in a different perspective for a different reason. I struggle with life like everybody else does, right? I want things to work a certain way. However, the idea that things aren't working well, and actually in James chapter 1, James is writing to a group of people that were dispersed and things weren't working out. They were confused about why stuff was going on. And James says in James chapter 1, verse 2 through 4, I'm going to quote it, but you should read it. I don't want to read the Bible while I'm driving. That would be very irresponsible. So I'm going to quote it from my head. So I don't quote it quite correctly. Forgive me. As they said when I was growing up, count it to my head and not my heart. I want to quote it correctly, but I'll do my best. But I had this thought right now, so I wanted to share it. James chapter 1, verses 2 through 4 says this: count it all joy, my brethren, when you face trials of any kind, knowing the testing of your faith proves patience. Let patience have its perfect work, that you may be mature, lacking nothing. It says something like that, the idea of count it all joy when you face trials of many times. Some versions says trials, some says temptations, but the idea is this: when you face trials, when things don't go well, James says count it all joy. Like, do the math. Like, what do you mean count it all joy? I just got a diagnosis of cancer. My mom just passed away. I just failed my math test. Count it all joy. And in the context, he was talking about they were being persecuted for their faith. And he's saying count it all joy. But I can apply that to my life when anything happens in my life that I don't quite understand, because God is up to something great. He goes on and says, count it all joy when you face trials of any kind, knowing that the testing of your faith will be tested. When you say you believe in Christ, you start to grow, that test will be tested. That faith will be tested. And somebody says a faith that's not worth testing is not worth having. Our faith is going to be tested to make sure that we understand what we understand and believe what we say we believe. Your faith will be tested. I keep saying your test will be tested. Your faith will be tested. And it's okay. And he says, count it all joy when you face trials, knowing the testing of your faith proves patience, or some versions say steadfastness. That as you begin to trust in God and you begin to endure, let that work in you as you begin to focus on God, not on yourselves. You know, sometimes I like to say it this way: look for the good. Like when something happens to me or something's not going well. Even today, I was leaving the house, my garage door wasn't closing. I'm like, what's going on, right? And it was delaying my progress. And one day I was leaving to go to a school. I'm getting out there, I'm on time. All of a sudden, this train that took like 5 minutes. Oh, a 5-minute train? 5 minutes on the train put me behind schedule. And I can choose to be upset. I can grump about it. But I've learned over time, hey, maybe this is happening for a reason. Maybe this train is stopping me from getting the accident that I was going to head right to, right? I don't know what the situation is. I don't have control over it, but I know who I can trust. So it's not just looking for the good, but I need to look to God. I think that's the second step. Look for the good. Yeah, in everything in your life, look for the good, build on the good. But ultimately, the better answer is to look to God. I'm looking to God. God, what are you up to? And I can be assured that you're up to something great, because you're always at work for my good and your glory. And so I want to trust that. So he says, count it all joy when you face trials of any kind, knowing that the test of your faith proves patience or endurance, and let patience have its perfect work. Let it work in your life that you may be mature, or some Bible says complete. The idea you are growing up in your faith, you will be mature, lacking in nothing. So I like to do the math differently from what I understand. I need to look to God, let God do the math, to count these things all joy, because I don't understand what's going on sometimes, but I know who has everything under control. One illustration I like to use when I think about this is the idea of a thermostat versus a thermometer. A thermometer teaches you or shows you what is going on, right? The thermometer says, hey, the temperature is at 70 degrees, right? While thermostat controls where the temperature will go to, right? So look at it this way. When I look at my life, I can see the thermometer. Like, man, this is hot, this is heavy, this is cold, it's not good. But I'm trusting that God has his hand on the thermostat. He controls what's going on, the ups and downs in life, the ins and outs in life. And I can trust the one who has his hand on that thermometer. So even if the math is not mathing to me, I can trust the math is mathing to God, because not only he created me, he created the world, he created the math. So anyway, hope that's helpful for you as you go through struggles. Focus on James chapter 1, count it all joy. And we'll talk later in another video about what it means to count it all joy. Not that I'm happy in bad situations, but what does joy mean? Until then, hopefully this video is helpful to you to help you live for God by connecting faith and life. Peace.